Are you having a good time so far? Like it? Because I was sitting in the back and I was watching everybody's face, like very serious. And of course, we're discussing serious things, but one thing that every active volunteer says is have fun during the process, okay? So don't be like, I go, oh, wow, watching us like that all the time. Have some fun and digest the information, and afterwards we'll have a great party, and then we'll continue our activism, all right? Okay, so Frankie said that I should introduce myself, so I will. My name is Gilbert. I've been active with the Zeitgeist movement since, well, day one, I think. I joined my local chapter. Was not such a good adventure, so I joined the global side and got active there. I, well, I saw that there was not so much coordination going on in the movement, so I thought, well, maybe I should be the one starting it. So I got involved with the global chapters, and here we are today, like 7 years of non-stop coordination. We've been doing a lot of work, and lots of things have happened, as I will talk about in my talk. And I'll just fill you guys in, all right? So my talk is called TZM Activism Evolved. And the reason I'm talking about evolving the activism is because I've been in it since the beginning. And I want us to go from this stage to the next stage, because we're a good movement. Everything, our material is solid, but the only thing that's lacking right now is moving to the next stage. We need to get out there, and that's what my talk will be about. So I've already talked about that, how when I got into the movement, so I won't cover it. I'm 27 now, and you know what? Time flies. When I got into the movement, I was 20 years. I was like, yes, let's change the world. And, you know, it's already been so much years. And, you know, before I know it, I'll be 50. And I hope we're still around by then. We're not sure. But, you know, I feel that we need to make certain steps, or we need to take certain steps right now. Otherwise, there's no point in having a movement like this. Well, even though the years passed by fast, I've experienced a lot of changes in the movement. And I'll make a case today of why I think that these changes have been good for the movement, for the most part. There's been also changes that were maybe less fortunate, but some of the changes that we've experienced have been very good. And I will highlight some of the steps we need to take in order to achieve the true potential that this movement has. Not unnecessary to mention is that I have many people to thank for providing feedback in order how to change the movement, because obviously during all the years of activism, much people have come to me like, Gilbert, you guys are doing a great job, but we need to change this or that. I've listened to it, but I couldn't affect the change at the time that it was mentioned all the time. And I felt bad about it because, you know, people have good ideas sometimes, and we listen to it, but it's not always possible at that point in time to affect that change. And that's a shame, because I know they're very passionate about the train of thought, but it's just not always possible, you know? So we had to live with that, and I think now is the time that we can. And I'll come to that in my next slide. So what I'm going to talk about is a piece of self-reflection, identifying problems and weaknesses in the establishment of this movement. I will also highlight those changes which I feel have contributed to the development of the movement and the train of thought behind the natural law resource-based economy. That's a fucking long line. So let's go way back to where it all began, all right? The Zeitgeist movement started out as an activist arm of the Venus Project. The life work of Jacques Fresco is truly amazing, and I don't think anyone can deny that there is a solid foundation in his ideas. So I would like to take this moment to thank Jacques and Roxanne for inspiring many of us. And that's what they deserve. Like, there are many great ideas, and I hope they continue to bring out good ideas and develop whatever they're doing right now. But we parted ways, and yeah, that came about because after a while, many of us digested a lot of the info put forward by the Venus Project and sought a way to convey this information to a larger public. I don't say general public because that's what we are. We are general public, we're normal people, and that's fine. But at this point that we try to convey this information to a larger public, that's when the Activist Guide was written by Peter. And although inspired by the Venus Project, this piece was an extended interpretation of the ideas put forward by the Venus Project. And the inclusion of more information from more sources was broadly endorsed by a lot of people in the movement because we liked broadening the train of thought, all right? From there, we have followed a path and included much more relevant materials. And the need for the movement to define its train of thought was there. So TZM Divine was born, if you will, all right? It got created, and at this moment, that is what represents our ideas. It's not a final destination, but we're at that station right now, and we're content with the station we're at this moment. If there are new ideas that come about that we agree with, we're happy to include it. But for the moment, that's our source of reference. That is our Bible. Just kidding. So, self-reflection is a very good thing because as a movement, we started out very strong, the documentary series did a very big thing for our movement. And we spiked. There were a lot of people coming out and helping. But at some point, when we when we cross a couple of years, my English is messed up, I'm sorry. when we have performed activism for a couple of years, we got to ask ourselves the question, like, is what we are doing the right thing, and are we doing it the right way? So we need to self-reflect, all right? I'm going to point out a couple of things that I think are very important in that process of self-reflection. One thing that was a big pain of the butt was fear of leadership, all right? Some people are profoundly fear of leadership, and I don't know why. While it is true that we are in essence a leadership movement, a leaderless movement, sorry, I've messed up there, see? A leaderless movement, without people taking charge and initiative, we might as well be called the Zeitgeist standstill, because we'll be going nowhere. Over the years as global chapters administrator, I've been called the most awful things. Like, no, I will not give you the examples. So I've been called awful things. Just for trying to get the movement on track. And I will never claim that I always made the right choices, but at least I was there, all right? We need people to lead, to take initiative. And if you can't trust your fellow movement members, maybe the movement is not the right place for you. So we moved on from this. And people who had the mindset that people taking charge do that to satisfy their hunger for power, well, I'm not really sure where they're coming from, There's no real satisfaction in leading a bunch of people that want to change the world. It's good. It's a good feeling to try and change the world, but to have a sense of leadership in that, there's no real gain for anybody. We're doing it because we want it to happen. We want it to change. Well, last year in Toronto, in my talk, I also covered expectations of members when they join the movement. And they differ greatly because TZM as an entity, when we put out the documentaries, people had all kinds of ideas about the movement. And they joined, they got active. And at some point, when these people started to become active, they had different expectations of what the movement would be at that time. And the difficulty with that was that we couldn't always realize what they expected from the movement, because some people expected change overnight, which obviously can't happen. Like in 2010, I was like, yes, let's change the world tomorrow. And it obviously didn't happen. No, it's true. Yeah, it didn't happen. I was ambitious. But we gotta realize that it can happen overnight, right? But some people don't, and they don't realize that, and they come into the movement, they get disappointed, and they leave, which is a huge shame, because there's a lot of people that have been active in the movement that I'd rather see they stayed rather than they left. But that's just the reality of things. We just gotta accept it. We also had a lot of organizational challenges. I want to point out that in the very beginning, we actually had several global teams formed, and the documentaries also brought a lot of very curious people in who signed up to these teams. The problem that we had, though, is that the movement's identity was evolving. And while some were happy with the direction we took, for others it was different. Where we once had stable teams, suddenly members were scattered, and we weren't really sure who wanted to do activism under TZM umbrella anymore. They wanted either to be identified with the Venus Project, or with the Zeitgeist movement, or with something totally else, right? And then there was also the idea of having a central team comprised of active volunteers and coordinators to actively manage the day-by-day organization of the movement. But this idea never made it. Again, out of a fear of leadership. People are very resistant to the idea of having day-to-day organization in the movement and having a central team coordinated. I don't know why, but leaderless movement is kind of icky, but we need it. Because if we don't organize it, it's not gonna happen, right? So after that, most of the weight fell on just a select few people. Mostly my team, the Global Chapters Administration, Peter, for example, and a handful of other volunteers. But we can't run a global movement with just a couple of people. I mean, we have so many passive supporters, which is great. I'm very happy about it, that a lot of people support this train of thought. But if we want to take this forward, it's not gonna happen if we only have 5, maybe 10 people to coordinate the day-by-day activism. So we need more people there. And that's the only way we're gonna move this forward. So how do we evolve into a state that we can effectively communicate the train of thought behind the natural law resource-based economy and do it under the umbrella of a well-organized movement? The first step is to acknowledge our public. In culture as it is today, people are used to identify with a brand, a simple marketing technique. And while many of us have our own ideas, the way branding contributes to, for example, cyclical or unnecessary consumption, we need to put these feelings aside when performing activism. We have to utilize the dominant culture to our advantage. For that reason, it is important that we do enough under the TZM umbrella so that people know what it stands for and can identify with it. Furthermore, we have to acknowledge the way that we address our audience is everything. While I will, for example, never argue the benefits of a healthy diet, when you take an aggressive stance towards people that do not share these ideas, you're not going to get your idea across. Like, if you are vegan, for example, that's great. And if you can explain why you are, perfectly fine. If you're going to talk to the average guy going to his job, 9 to 5 or maybe 9 to 7, and he's always in a hurry, and it's like, okay, maybe you should change your eating habits. Have a healthy diet and pick 6 times in a day to eat. He's gonna look at you like, I don't have no fucking time, dude. I'm going to Burger King. That's it, right? So we need to consider the people we are talking to. So how do we actually talk to these people. We need to find points of entry. Where we can be more effective is to focus our attention on the content that does hit our public more directly, such as employment or income inequality, because that's what people carry with them all the time, because losing your job is a very big thing. For me, it is. Like, when I'm working, that's what is in my mind all the time. Am I going to keep my job? If you're going to talk about somebody about the movement, perhaps that's a better entry point. Talk about things that are current and probably on the person's mind. This is not a brainwashing workshop, by the way. I'm just telling you, like, you need to find the right points of entry. And that it's not always simple to identify, but certainly with most of the people that are currently employed, this is a very good subject to start with, all right? And at that point, they might be willing to consider the train of thought because you've talked to them about something that they can identify with. We also need to be realistic and accept that some transitional initiatives are actually helping a lot in helping people adjust their values to perhaps one day see the benefits of a natural law resource-based economy. Today, actually, we will have two speakers that are representing two great initiatives to give you an idea what that could be. That does not mean, however, that local chapters can exist while solely doing activism for this initiative, because there must be harmony. You gotta make a choice. Do activists for the Zeitgeist movement, do something for the other initiative. But we do endorse it because while some projects might be not directly beneficial to our greater cause, they might be beneficial for where we are now. So we shouldn't shrug that off. It is also important. And in the long run, it might actually help us. So that's a better way to view it, all right? And besides that, there's nothing wrong with people helping their local community or contributing to science, even if it's patchwork on a larger scale. Doing good makes you feel good. And anybody that feels good about themselves is going to be more valuable to the movement in a broader sense, you know? When you are feeling good, anything you do is going to be more effective. So if that's what you want to do, if you want to be doing something that makes you feel good and you're active in a chapter, go ahead and do it. It's okay. As long as you don't forget that we need to progress different goals at different times. Your local work and your chapter work. If you can find harmony, that's all right. An evolving movement also needs to have its organization in order. And therefore, we need to identify core responsibilities and tasks that need to be done. It can no longer be a free-for-all, because it was like that for a while. And a lot of people signed up and just said, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. And trying to be an inclusive movement, we try to allow that, but it does not work. Like where we are today, we have a decent organization, and I'm happy about that, but it could be so much better. So from this point on, we're not going to allow that anymore. We're going to have set organization, and anybody that wants to volunteer for roles that are included is welcome to. But it's not going to be a free-for-all. Because if we want to move forward as a movement, we really need to be organized. It's great that we have millions of supporters. I'm very happy about that, you know? But if we want to do something with this, I mean, last night, the event was good. We had a fun time, everybody mingled, and everybody left with a feeling like we're going to change the world, but we're not going to change the world if we only mingle with each other. We really got to engage our public, and that's all we need to do, engage the public all the time. And the problem is that we were seeking an identity. Now we have an identity. Now we need to move forward. All right? Don't Don't make me blush. I know I'm brown, but I can blush. So while I can name a dozen more points of evolution for the movement, anybody could wonder, like, how do we realize these changes? But I feel the answer is already there. We just need to hit the right buttons. The only way to get more passive supporters involved is to keep them in the loop, keep them informed, because that's what's been lacking over the years. We've been there. There have been Facebook updates and status updates, but we haven't been keeping everybody involved or informed all the time. And that's something we've always sought to improve, but we never could realize it because we didn't have enough volunteers. I have maybe 5 or 6 people in my team, and they are doing the best they can to coordinate a global movement with hundreds of emails coming in every week, and it's just insane, you know. We've always said there needs to be one email going out to the public once a month, which is a very normal thing. But you know what? We can't realize it. We can't do it because there are not enough people to get that done. So we need people to step up. It's a simple task. Just compile the information and send it out. And if you are studying, for example, journalism, or if you just like writing articles, we'll be happy to have you. And it will help the movement on a broader scale so much. It would. A small task to change the world. Please, I'm begging you, literally. I already talked about engagement, like we gotta engage the community all the time. But if we look at an organization like Greenpeace, for example, and consider why they're successful, it's because they're engaging the public all the time. If somebody does something that they do not like, they are out there and they're showing the public, like, we don't like this shit and you better do something about it. I'm not saying they always get what they want, but at least they're out there and trying to convince the public that what we are doing isn't right. And I'm not saying we should go do that and right? But there's things that we can do to make the public or our audience realize that we're serious about it. And sometimes we just have to take it a step further. With moderation, like we shouldn't go to extremes, but we can push and hit the border, right? And anytime we write a response on an item, for example, something that's very, very, well, a lot talked about in current media, that's also a good thing because we did do a couple of press releases and they were very well received. Do you guys remember that? We had a couple of items that we responded to as a movement, and it was broadly discussed. And we need to continue that trend because anytime that we share our opinion on an article, it's going to be considered by a broader audience, right? So what I would like to see in the coming year is more people that are able to write articles in a good way, to take current items and reflect on it and write something on behalf of the movement. And perhaps, I'm not saying it will get shared, perhaps you can share it. And that's a way that we can turn the attention on the larger ideas that the movement has to share. Because if we're not there, if we're not out there, we're not visible, some people will see us, but not everybody. We just need to be out there all the time. In short, we also, for our member base, need to have goals that get realized. Because something I know that has disappointed a lot of members is that we've done a lot of activism, but we didn't always get the goals realized that they wanted to see accomplished. And that's a very big factor here, because when people are joining chapters and they just watch documentaries, like, they have the same feeling like I had a couple of years ago, like, we're gonna change the world, right? And when it doesn't happen in a couple of months, they're gonna be disappointed. So one thing, we got to set their expectations straight, but we also, as a movement, which we didn't before, have to make sure that we define goals on a movement-wide basis. This has to come from the global level, and we have to get them realized, because then the people have a sense of accomplishment. It's sad that we have to say it in such a way, but that's the reality of things right now. If things get accomplished, people feel more secured. And I feel that as a movement, we have to do that right now. Make sure we have short-term projects, short-term goals. Oh, sorry about that. Short-term goals, and get those accomplished. All right? So that's where I want to move to in 2015. But we have to do it together, and that's where the grassroots nature of the movement comes in, where members come up with ideas instead of waiting to be directed. The only problem we've had so far is that people make suggestions, but they never take responsibility for it. You know, that's the problem. Like, everybody has good ideas, and it's like, okay, well, the Zeitgeist movement should do this, and we should do that, and I have a very good idea for a project. You should do this. But they never stand up and take responsibility for it. But there is no Zeitgeist movement reserve of people that can do shit. Right? There is not. We need actual people to do or actually, I'm looking for the right English word, to execute the ideas that they put forward. Yes? Because there's nobody there waiting to execute your idea. You have to step up and take responsibility. Because we got to do it together. You, and me. Because if it's not that, then it's never going to happen. All right? This sounds very dramatic, but it's heartfelt. Well, on a closing note, I want you all to think back to when you were a child. Because I always felt there was something wrong with the world, and I never understood why others had to suffer while some had more than enough to live on. And if I would ask my mother, like, why is the world arranged this way? She'd always tell me, yeah, it's not right, but you can't do anything about it. And it's a romantic notion that you want to try and change it. And when I consider where I'm now, I think that we can change it, and we will. So let's do it. Thank you very much for listening.